Hey everybody, Norm Johnson here from Enchanted Fibers. So today we're going to start together creating a video on how we make this scarf. I've had a few people kind of ask, so it's a simple scarf, simple felting. You can use whatever, but I'm going to use some different colors here. I have some kind of a blue, more of a raspberry color, a different blue, and then a little lavender color. I'll use those as the viscose. I'm going to use black alpaca as I did in this scarf, and then I have some yarns that I'm going to use as well. So we'll go through this video. I'll have everything laid out. You can see how we put everything together, and you can try it on your own. So, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Hey everybody, Norm Johnson here. So in this video you're about to watch, I wanted to apologize. It's not professional photography or videography. It's definitely not professional audio. But hopefully you enjoy it. It was intended to share some of the approaches that we took to make this scarf, and we'll make it in the journey that you're about to watch and enjoy. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments below this video, and we hope that you enjoy it and the process of being able to make your own scarf. Have a great day. Before we get too far, I want to just highlight the products that we'll be using to make this scarf. Again, we have our viscose and the different colors that we've chosen to use. Have our yarns that we're planning to use for embellishment. We have our bubble wrap to start with, and our pattern will be 11 inches wide, 85 inches long. We have our pool noodle that we're going to use to roll everything in. Have our mosquito netting that we'll use to cover everything. Have our towel to wrap in the rolled items into. We have our water sprayer. Have my sanders. Have our palm sander, a little ceramic sander. I also use my hands in different places. And then we have our black alpaca fiber that we'll use to as a sandwich in the middle of the sandwich that we're going to create. So again, just quickly, the process we're going to use, we're going to lay out the viscose. We'll embellish it with some yarns. We'll cover all of that with our black alpaca. Then we'll repeat and reverse it. We'll use our yarns, and then we'll put our viscose down as well. And then we'll begin the felting process where we wet everything down. We sand on it, we roll it, and hopefully we come up with a completed project. So I'm not going to capture every step of the process along the way, but we'll have segments of the process that show how we're working through that particular step or particular activity. So here we go. We're going to start with our cobalt blue viscose. I've pulled off a piece about 6 inches long. I'm going to pull it apart and kind of lay them back in layers. Hopefully you can see that. That just helps to loosen up the fibers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a frame around the outside. Again, it's 11 inches wide and 85 inches long, but just pulling, a little bit of viscose, kind of making a cloud as we work around. And Again, I'll do both sides. Just kind of build an outside frame. And we'll just repeat this, other than the next color will come on the inside of that, and we'll go around and around. So I'm gonna work on building this frame, and we'll be back when I'm finished. So we're finishing up our blue frame, go around of the 11 by 85 segment. This frame is, layer maybe a couple inches wide, 1.5 to 2 inches. There's no scientific measure. It's just laying out some colors and all. So, but again, let me come in a little closer. So I have my fleece, or not my fleece, but my viscose. I'm holding it in my hand and running this way, and I'm just pulling off fibers. And I'm just using those thin layers to lay down into my frame. You can always fill in after you've gone around. If there's places that look a little thinner, you can do that. Just fill in the gaps. Again, it's just kind of creating the layer of color that will appear in your scarf. So we'll set that aside. Again, we have our purple. This is more of a bluish purple, maybe a periwinkle, and so we'll use that. Again, we're just going to kind of pull from the middle, and we're going to lay it down on the inside of the blue frame that we created. We have to set this viscose aside. It got wet here from water that was on the bubble wrap. Again, thin layer just being applied. We may lay it over. And as you can see, just kind of work through it. No scientific component of things. This is art, I guess. Kind of like finger painting. Put a little bit of color here and a little bit of color there. All right, well, let me finish this layer and go around, and we'll be back shortly. So I have two frames done. You can see the cobalt and a little bit of periwinkle. We're going to use a little brighter raspberry this time. Again, just pulling from the middle and laying it in here. We do both sides, of the frame. So we're just kind of going around and around. You can see the different colors, and don't straighten out the edges. Just kind of leave the fibers laying there, and just gives a different kind of coloration when the felting's done, because it's going to blend with the black alpaca, you know, as well. So, and this is more art than it is science. It's taken me a while to accept that fact that I can't be precise and all, and it's working out. Slowly getting the techniques that work for me, understanding that this is just finger painting, and you hope that something sticks as you're going through. All right, I'm going to finish this round and I'll be back. Well, as you can see, we have 3 colors done. We have our cobalt blue, we have our periwinkle, we have our raspberry. Now we're going to use kind of a mauve purple. We're just going to go use that through the center. Again, it's kind of pulling from the middle of this viscose top. If you're looking for viscose, you can find a lot of offerings on the on Etsy. There's many different colors available to choose from. Many different suppliers. You have some onshore suppliers, you have some offshore suppliers. So some you'll get free shipping with a certain amount in your purchase. A lot to choose from in that world. So let me finish this up and we'll be back. Well, I zoomed in a little bit here so you can see the 4 colors. We just kind of go around and around and around each time. So again, we started at 11 inches wide, 85 inches long. We've used viscose, you know, in this process of creating a layer of color that will be on the outside of the black alpaca that we plan to use. You can choose whatever. You could use this as colored wool. If you have dyed wool that you want to use, you could use that and bypass the use of the alpaca. So it's just, the felting process is always interesting. So now I'm going to zoom back out. There we are. Now we're going to use some yarns. Selected a couple hand spun type art yarns that I'm just going to cut segments of them and lay them into the scarf. And we'll then put a layer of black alpaca over the top of it. So here we go. And as far as the process, I'll start with this blue and brown. Again, there's no rhyme or reason. I'll just kind of go around and around, crossed it. Sometimes we'll build a circle. Sometimes we'll just cut it off. Find the scissors here. And you can embellish as you want. If you want to put some metallic fibers in to get a little bit of bling, you can do that. So it's everybody's choice. And this yarn will bring a little bit of color because it'll come through. It's more intended to bring a little bit of structure to the surface. So our first yarn. And these are really just hand spun yarns, so you're going to see some thick and thin, and that adds to that structure on the coloration. So I like to call it art yarn. I think those hand spinners probably don't really like that term, but it is artistic. As you can see if I can get this close for you. As you can see, it goes from thin to thick, back to thin. So it's a beautiful yarn for the processes that I'm using it for. So it has a lot of different colorations and variances in it as well. So we've done that. If the sound on this is poor, I apologize. My microphones are not working. So, but again, we're going to start with some black alpaca from our bat. And what I tend to do is I'll tend to set it on the table here. And then I'm going to pull off a segment of that. I'm going to set that on the table. And then I'm just going to kind of deconstruct. I'm going to pull off a layer. It went on and it was created layer after layer after layer. So we'll work through that. It was kind of laid around the edge. Again, pulling off some of the layers that where it seems a little thick. You can use the traditional method of shingles from your alpaca roving, from your wool top. So crisscross the layers, as well as we're kind of building this. I know that using this bat is a non-traditional approach to felting, if you will. They probably don't get the consistency that you might get from laying the shingles out from wool top or the alpaca roving. But again, this is art, not science. I do pay attention to the thickness, and I try and create an even layer, all the way through. But we also know sometimes it's going to be thick and it's going to be thin, and it's just an approach that works for me and my projects. I use this in all of my projects, whether it's a scarf, a poncho, a shawl. It's just the process has again worked for me in my 9 years of making felt and wearable garments, accessories, not garments, because I don't get into the dresses, and I don't get into things that are more size related. But again, I'm going to finish this up and we'll be back shortly. Create that thin layer. You can probably see through it. As you can see, we have our black alpaca layer down, and I put in a layer of the yarn. And it's not exact, but it's the same yarns on the two different sides that we're using. You don't have to. You could use a different yarn, get some colors and things, but you know, in this particular case, I just chose to do that. So I'm going to start with the cobalt blue again. Again, we're going to go around the outside. And you know, and if some of these fibers overlap the outside edge, I'm okay with that. I'll fix it or address it when I create my organic straight edges. Yeah, just pulling thin layers. It's kind of creating a cloud of the viscose. We'll be back shortly. We have our cobalt blue layer on, gone around, so it's a little more visible on the black alpaca, that's for certain, than it was on the clear bubble wrap. We're going to use our periwinkle color now. We may make this, just on purpose, make this a little wider than we did on the other side. Just maybe just so that it's a little more visible on one side as being part of the pattern. You know, the felt making is sometimes just a very simple process. You know, it's a lot of repeatable activities in terms of laying out your fibers, having your pattern, knowing what your shrinkage rate is. So as I said earlier, this is 11 inches wide, 85 inches long. That's what works for this black alpaca and getting to the preferred finished size that I'm after. So you need to do a sample with the fibers you're choosing. You know, whether using even alpaca or wool. You know, don't take this measurement as an exact starting place. Kind of figure out the final size that you would like, and then increase the size of that, both the width and the length, based on how much your fiber is going to shrink. It's a coefficient of increase or your shrinkage rate, whatever you want to call it. But all fibers in a felting state are going to have some shrinkage and reduce in size from your starting point. So know what that number is for your fibers, for your techniques. Could be different if you're using an electric sander versus a palm sander and things. So, but again, there's few videos on YouTube that talk about, you know, creating a sample, defining your coefficient of increase and things. So I'm not going to go into that today, but it might be something I'll add in the future. All right, well, I'm going to finish up my layers here with the periwinkle and the other two colors, and we'll be back when I'm finished. Okay, we've finished laying out our viscose. We kind of have our sandwich here of viscose on the bottom, alpaca fiber in the middle, viscose on top. You can see the bowl of water is lukewarm, to room temperature pretty much. And we have some Dawn dishwashing soap added to it as well. So we're going to now wet it down and then show you the process I use to to apply the water. So we have our water. I like to push some air into the water, get some soap going. We're gonna use a sprayer, load it up with water, and then we just kind of come down. I come around the edges. I like to go around the edges first. I don't know that it makes a difference, but that's kind of the way I like to do it. Maybe it's a habit I've developed, but there are many ways to apply your water to your building project. You have some people that use little handheld sprayers. You can put holes in the top of a bottle cap and use that to sprinkle it. So if you look at YouTube, you'll just see a variety of approaches that people are using. You can see how this is going from a 3D to a 2D. Once we get everything soaked down, we're gonna let it soak a little while, and then we'll come in and straighten up our edges. They're not going to be perfectly straight, and they'll be a little organic, but less organic than what they are right now. All the fibers sticking out, and also we'll push some of that back in, straighten up the edges. I think I've showed this before, but what I'd like to do is just kind of pull in the edges. So I use my fingers to pull it around. I have my edge of my scarf marked, so I can kind of pull things in until I get to that edge. There it is. So. It's not 100% straight, but straighter with these loose fibers being pulled in. I'll finish up the edges and we'll be back. can see, I've started covering up everything. Edges are straight enough anyway. Have our mosquito netting. We're laying that down. So one of the things I like to do now is just go through and push things down with my hands. Feels pretty dry because the fiber's absorbing the water. So we'll put a little bit more water on top here. Put it in the center and we'll push it out as we're applying our with the hands. You can use gloves if you want. I just find that this works okay to kind of just go through, pat it down, get everything flat the best we can. In other videos you've seen, I like this little ceramic sander that I get from Dharma Trading Company, and I just use it to kind of lightly go across the edges. Start sealing those edges as I'm getting that felting to go through. Just kind of go around the edge. There's places where I see the fiber kind of pushing out and I want it to be straighter. I can lift the mosquito netting and straighten those spots out. And then once I've gotten all the way around the edge, then I'll start going back and forth from the width standpoint. And then you can come back and do it from the length standpoint. This is a process I may do for 30 minutes. Just kind of rub with the sander. I'm going to convert over to my wood sander here. You see that. Again, we have our palm sander from Heartfelt Silks. It's got the rougher edges on the bottom. Fits nice in your hands. Again, we'll go back and forth. We'll do long ways. So I'll do this for a while and I'll come back when we're ready to roll. Well, we've been sanding for a while. We'll sand a little bit more. And you can apply a little bit more pressure as we're going through. And this is just one method of sanding, so you can use an electric sander. You'll see a lot of the expert felt makers from the European countries, they use a sander. Usually it's a Makita brand. But if you watch some of their videos, you'll see them and get an idea of what model that they're using. But it definitely probably saves on the wrist and the arm and things. So but I can still do this, I guess, by hand, so I'll do it versus going with the electric approach. So I'm going to peel the mosquito netting off. If you wish, you can leave the mosquito netting on and roll, a few hundred times, and then unroll it and roll some more. But that's totally up to you. How what approach you take. I use both approaches where I'll leave it on and then roll and things. So, all right. Have my towel, have my pool noodle. I'm going to start rolling it up from this end, just more probably because it's visible on the video. So we're going to roll it this way, and then we'll wrap it in the scarf or in the towel. Just roll it up around the pool noodle. Lay out my towel. Get onto the table. You can tie this if you wish. I'll show you. Just use a knee-high nylon. Wrap it around. And then tie it. I'm not going to use that just because the package is pretty small. On the ponchos and other things we do, I do tie them just to kind of keep everything together. But, again, so we have it rolled up. I'm going to just roll it around in the towel, and then we're going to roll it. So the scarf is right here, so we're just, I like to roll with my arms, have my forearms. Again, if you have physical challenges and ailments, you can find some rolling machines that are available to help with the rolling. And they're not inexpensive, but when it comes to your health and well-being, it's probably a good investment if you're going to be felting it a lot. So we're going to do this. I'm going to go like this and probably about 400 times, and then I'll unpack it and roll it from the other direction, and we'll roll about 400 times. And then we'll come back here, do 200 and 200, and then 100 and 100 to, rolling down, going down in the numbers as we go forward. So I'll be back shortly, and we'll see how this thing finishes up. Okay, we're about 3/4 of the way done with our rolling. And so what I'm going to do is turn this scarf over, just something I tend to do. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but just a habit that I have created for myself. And so here we go. Okay, so, just turn it over. Have my frame marked so I know how long And that's one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out, you know, to be in the frame. Okay, well, it's also a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water just down the center with the sprayer. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just a little bit down the center, and it'll spread out as you roll it up. Look at her edges. We're just going to roll it up around that noodle. Yeah, you see I'll pull it to me. Sometimes the towel will roll up. Bring it to the end. Wrap our towel around it. And we're back to rolling. We'll do 100 each way, and I think we should be set. Well, we finished rolling. Again, we did 400 one way, unrolled it, re-rolled it, 400, unrolled it, re-rolled it, 200, unrolled it, re-rolled it, 200, unrolled it, re-rolled it, 100, unrolled it, re-rolled it, 100, turned the scarf over, rolled it up, did 100, unrolled it, re-rolled it, and did 100 there as well. So we're going to go into a process we call fulling now. Just kind of continue to get the fibers to work together and to kind of shrink the overall project. So just pull the items in, and I'm just going to lift it up and drop it. We can also just gently rub it against the bubble wrap. You want to make sure you're doing it the width-wise as well. One thing I like to do is just kind of lay this out, fold it in half and fold it in half again. I'll just kind of roll this. And you're just trying to work the fibers a little bit more. We're just going around and around. And so, you know, we'll just re-roll it the other way. Pull it apart. Just, you know, pretty gentle work. You can work it in your hands like you're scratching the back of a dog. You can beat on it a little bit with your hands. going to do now is I'm going to move the camera. We're going to turn over to the sink and rinse some of this soap out. Hold on. So we have our project here. We have our sink filling up with water. And so I like to get a quarter of the tub full. And it's a good time to continue to massage and pull the project. So we're going to drop this just down in the water. We'll just kind of wash the soap out of it. You'll maybe get about half of it, half the soap out. There's still soap in here, but we're going to stop. We'll drain the sink, and we'll start filling it up. We're going to take this back to the table and full it some more, on the table itself, and then we'll bring it back to rinse again. We'll rinse it a couple times and then we'll get it ready to dry. So we have the scarf in the sink, rinsing again. So I don't know if you can see my hands. If you're using alpaca, you're most likely going to have some fibers that shed. These are the primaries that won't felt, so they will shed a little bit, especially when it's wet. As it dries, the shedding is reduced, but it's never going to be totally eliminated. That's potentially a major challenge with felting with alpaca, and that's why a lot of people choose not to use alpaca in their felting process. So you can minimize a little bit of it by having your fiber blended with 40% merino, but you definitely change the feel of your alpaca fiber when you add those larger scales to the process. So just something to be aware of. We're running water for our last rinse, and then in this rinse we're going to add our white vinegar, just to kind of stop the felting process, bring the fibers back to a normal pH. And the vinegar will also help remove any of the final soap residue that might still be in the scarf. So we'll get this rinsed and soaked, and we'll go on to the next step. So I've taken the scarf out of the sink, out of the water, kind of hand wrung it, get the water out of it. I'm going to roll it in this towel that we were using, and then press it to get a little bit more of the moisture out. And you can see the coloration. You can see the yarns and the texture of the yarns. I think so. It's we're going to let it dry a little bit, and then we'll iron it, and we'll let it finish drying, and we will be back to see the final product. Here's the scarf drying. Again, you can see the colors. Probably see a little bit of the reflection. You can see the yarn. So we'll leave it dry. We'll come back with our finished product. Maybe notice it's just over a mannequin, a dress form really. I take a garbage bag and put over the dress form, and then I'm laying the scarf over the top of that. And so the plastic just keeps the water off of the dress form. Well, we've completed our scarf. It's dry. It's been ironed again. It's here on the dress form. You can see the colors. Our cobalt blue and our periwinkle and our raspberry and our lavender. You can see the yarns. I hope you've enjoyed this journey through making our scarves. Again, we use viscose. We chose 4 colors. You can use more, you could use less. We use black alpaca is our felting fiber. You can use wool if you choose. You could use other fibers as well. You could use a blend of alpaca and wool in there. So whatever you use for your felting fibers will work in this scarf. So we had the layer of viscose in the yarn, we had our alpaca, and then we had our yarn and our viscose over the top of that. And then we wet felted it as we would wet felt any other project and wearable that you are working on. So hope you've enjoyed this journey. You guys have a great day. Thank you for watching. And again, if you want to learn more about Enchanted Fibers, visit us at www.enchantedfibers.com. And enjoy the other videos that are here on our channel. For future releases, subscribe and follow our channel. Have a great day.